Persons who are obese face a variety of forms of discrimination in personal relationships. These include rejection. They are more likely to be rejected by potential romantic partners than their non-obese counterparts. This is due to several factors, including bias against obese people, the perception that obese people are less attractive, and the perception that obese people are less healthy.
But during the weekend we spent with them, many of the young women at the convention spoke candidly about the difficulties, the obstacles they'd encountered in finding male companions.
Men would like to be with fat women in the open, go to restaurants and everything else, but society has put so much pressure on them, telling them, hey, you have to go out to a restaurant with a skinny woman. That's right.
Weight stigma. This can include critique for their weight, pressure to lose weight, and exclusion from activities because of their weight. Limited access to seating. Obese people may have difficulty finding seats on public transportation, as seats are designed for average-sized humans and can be remarkably challenging for obese people traveling long commutes or standing for long periods. Speaking of standing,
a passenger has been forced to stand for a 7-hour airline flight. U.S. Airways Flight 901 is one of the longest domestic nonstop flights. I believe it was from Anchorage to, I would assume, since it's U.S. Airways, it was to Philadelphia. And Arthur Berkowitz knows exactly how long it takes down to the minute because he had to stand for most of the flight when he returned to Philadelphia last July. Why would anyone stand for that long, you would ask Lewis? Well, he was next to a morbidly obese passenger who was, as we know can happen, as I've talked about, spilling into his personal space, making it impossible for him to sit in his assigned seat.
Harassment and bullying. Obese people may be harassed and occasionally bullied by ill-mannered passengers on public transportation. This harassment takes many forms, including verbal abuse and physical abuse.
Within the past 2 months, I have been the unwilling participant of a verbal attack in public, once waiting for a bus on a street corner, another time on a bus with vicious language, words about my size.
Lack of accommodations. Public transportation systems may not provide adequate accommodations for obese people, such as lack of accessible seating or restrooms. These challenges can make it difficult and uncomfortable for obese people to use public transportation. Therefore, obese people may be less likely to use public transit, which can limit their access to jobs, education, and other essential services. Soon after its inception, the fat acceptance movement was followed by an immediate succession of coups, and feminism was first in line. True to its form of occurring in waves, during the first wave of the fat acceptance movement, in the year 1972, the feminist group The Fat Underground was formed.
My name's Linda. We are a group of radical fat feminist women. We see our oppression as fat women as being inherent to sexism. We are an activist group who do public speaking, facilitate problem-solving groups for fat women, and generally try to publicly bring out suppressed medical information as well as offer support to other fat women.
It began as a radical chapter of NAFA and spun off to become independent when NAFA expressed concerns about its promotion of a fiercer activist philosophy. The Fat Underground were inspired by, and in some cases, members of the Radical Therapy Collective, a feminist group that believed that many psychological problems were caused by oppressive social institutions and practices. Founded by Sarah Fishman, then Sarah Aldebaran, and Judy Freespirit, the Fat Underground took issue with what they saw as a growing bias against obesity in the scientific community. They coined the saying, "A diet is a cure that does not work for a disease that does not exist." Shortly afterward, Fishman moved to Connecticut, where along with Karen Scott Jones, she founded the New Haven Fat Liberation Front, an organization similar to the Fat Underground in its scope and focus. In 1983, the two groups collaborated to publish a seminal book related to fat activism, Shadow on a Tightrope, which collected several fat activist position papers initially distributed by the Fat Underground, as well as poems and essays from other writers. In the 1980s, feminists began to take a more active role in the fat acceptance movement. They argued that fat acceptance was a feminist issue because obese women were disproportionately affected by weight discrimination. Feminists also argued that fat acceptance movement needed to be more inclusive of women of color, lesbians, and other marginalized groups. At this point, the fat acceptance movement has been making strides in pushing for better treatment of obese people in America. Within the 1980s, overweight people in the United States began seeking legal redress for discrimination based on weight, primarily in the workplace, but also for being treated differently pertaining to services or entertainment.
Some of the myths associated to being fat.
What myths?
What myths?
Yeah.
It's unhealthy.
Being a slob, being dirty, being dumb, being lazy, stupid. Thin people always have a good sense of humor. Fat people are jolly.
The results of these cases have varied considerably, although in some instances, the American with Disabilities Act has been successfully used to argue disputes of discrimination against fat people. The Americans with Disabilities Act continues to be used as there is no USA federal law against weight discrimination. However, the state of Michigan has passed a law against weight discrimination. The cities of Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Santa Cruz, Birmingham, Urbana, New York, and Madison have also passed laws prohibiting weight discrimination. In cities with implemented weight discrimination law, it is rare for more than one case a year to be brought, except for San Francisco, which may have as many as 6. However, not all legal changes have protected the rights of fat people. Despite recommendations from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to the contrary,